Hi, I'm Rob Newell with FLW Outdoors. I'm here today with BP Pro JT Kenney, a man that's basically made an art form out of flipping hydrilla mats. Not necessarily just hydrilla, but just really thick, matted vegetation, punching big tungsten weights through them. And JT, in your career, 6-7 years with FLW Outdoors, you've won $475,000, almost $500,000.
Yep.
What percentage of that would you say you've made off of flipping hydrilla?
At least half of it, I'm sure, has come from this technique. Flipping big weights in places where people have never put baits before.
I remember several years ago there was a Stren event down at Okeechobee, and you weighed in 32.12 one of those days doing this technique.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about that. I mean, that's got to be what hooks you on this kind of technique.
Well, I was hooked on it before then, but that's just one more reason that why this technique works so good for big fish. It seems to me that the biggest fish get in the thickest places, whether it's fishing pressure or they just really like to be in cover, good ambush places, and the thicker the better. And the only way that I could get in there to them was with these small baits and big heavy tungsten weights.
And it's really the advent of tungsten. I mean, it's a dense, heavy metal. It's come on the scene in the last, I guess, 5 or 6 years, maybe a little bit later than that. But it really made it possible to reach these fish. And so let's talk about a little bit about, first of all, when we talk about tungsten weights, what's your go-to size? I know they come in different, nowadays they come in everything
Sure.
from a 1/16 to an 1.5 ounces, an 1 3/8. What is your basic go-to size for punching mats?
I would say 90% of the time I use 1.5 ounces. And that's because I'm always looking for the thickest place in the mat. That's basically what I look for. If I pull up to a bay that has a bunch of mats in it, the first thing I look for is the thickest one.
Okay.
And normally I need the heaviest weight, in my arsenal to punch through that thickest mat.
Okay, so we're talking about, that's about 1.5 ounces.
That's 1.5 ounces.
And, ever since the advent of tungsten several years ago, there's been a lot of dispute about inserts or non-inserts. And, what we mean by that is there's a little plastic deal that goes in there.
Yep, there's a little piece of plastic tubing that goes in there, and it keeps your line from being scarred as the sinker slides up and down on the line.
Okay.
It keeps that from scarring, and then when you set up on that big fish, if that sinker has scarred that line, then your line's going to break.
Because lead is much softer. When you set
Yep.
the hook, you can actually see sometimes on your sinker where the line has cut
Yes.
into your lead.
And with tungsten, you won't see that. Tungsten is a lot harder.
Okay, so you prefer the inserts.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Now, with if you're going to use a braided line, you may or may not need an insert. But with monofilament or fluorocarbon, I mean, I feel like you have to have. I won't even throw one if it doesn't have an insert.
Okay. Now, an interesting thing about you is you paint your own weights. You get these weights come a bright silver.
Mm-hmm.
When you first get them, they're just kind of like a super shiny silver like
Yep.
this. And long before companies started painting their own weights, you found a way to grind these down on a
Yep.
belt sounder and heat them up really hot and powder coat them with your own fleck and your
Yep.
own like June bug colors and
Yep,
stuff like that.
I can mix and match and make any color I want to match whatever bait or whatever the forage is around there. I can do whatever.
And then when you heat it up, I know the tube melts out.
Right. The brand of sinker that I use, the tube actually melts out when I go through my powder coating process.
Okay.
And so I had to get my own inserts and put in there.
Okay. So this is after you heat it up and color it, you put an insert back in
Yes.
it. Okay. And that basically is, in terms of color, you just like a June bug or a...
Yeah, June bug or black with some blue fleck in it, but just black works fine. But I have a lot of friends that are good flippers that actually like the shiny weight. They think it gives off a little flash.
Okay.
Personally, I like to kind of try to match the sinker to the bait as close as I can. I mean, I don't think it has to be. You could basically have black ones, and I'm sure you'd be fine.
In terms of line, let's talk about line a little bit. There's always been a debate. Braid, I know for a long time you were a mono purist.
Mm-hmm.
You liked mono more than braid. But these days you kind of go back and forth.
Yeah, definitely. I go just whatever situation it is. Basically, my rule of thumb is that if it's a soft grass like hydrilla or milfoil, or even matted eelgrass or something like that, I'll go with a monofilament or a fluorocarbon line. actually now more than monofilament. The new trilene fluorocarbon is what I like to use. It works really good, and it's a much smoother, softer presentation, and the fish can't see it as good as they can braided line.
Okay.
But if I get in a situation like a lot of times in Florida, we'll deal with gator grass, which is a really finey, you know, ridiculously tough grass.
Okay.
Now with that, I'll go with the braided line because the braided line definitely will rip through the real thick hard grass better than a mono will. So basically it's a situation deal which one I use.
But in terms of for the beginner that's just getting started doing this, I mean, would you recommend more of a mono or more of a braid?
I would definitely say to use braid. Braid would be better to use all the time if you were only going to pick one, because you can feel the bite better, and also it can get the fish out of the stuff better.
Okay. And I know when I started flipping that real matted stuff, there was a couple times I would get like a bite and it would just set the hook itself. I think mono, you almost couldn't pull that off. I mean,
yeah, definitely not. Like I said, the 65-pound spider wire ultracast is what I use, and I don't have any problems with it. So that's what I would recommend.
Okay. Now there's always this issue with these sinkers in making them stop on the line, getting them pegged to the line, because if you don't peg them, then they just the bait will stay on top of the mat, and this thing will just go back and forth.
You got to have it pegged, and I like to use just a little rubber. It's like a little rubber nail kind of. They're called peggets.
Okay.
And they slide up in the sinker. Once you already have the sinker on the line, then you just slide that in there and pull it tight, and that keeps your...
And then clip the ends off?
Yeah, you can clip the ends off, and that keeps your sinker in place, and it's rubber, so it's not going to hurt the line or the insert inside of it.
Tell me about these neat deals, bobber stoppers.
These are actually for brim fishing or crappie fishing, but some of these smaller tungsten weights, when you do go for a lighter presentation, maybe not in a real thick mat, you can use these bobber stoppers because those rubber nails won't fit inside of these small. They have a smaller hole. So you can use these bobber stoppers, and they work real good for keeping your sinker in place so it doesn't slide up and down the line.
Okay.
Very inexpensive too. They're less than $1 for 10 of them.
Will they work on a big weight like that?
They will, but the heavier weight will actually slide this little rubber guy on your line, where this will keep it right in place.
The peg-it will keep
it right in place.
So peg it with the bigger ounce and halves, and then on your smaller.
I use a peg-it from 3/4 ounce, ounce and a half, and anything from 5/8 or down, I'll use the bobber stopper.
Okay.